So do you still believe Sanjay, or
I believed up until this game. I thought they were gonna, if they won today, they'd only be 2 points back.
Did you see that? Did you see that tweet about the percentages from Frank Saravalli that I shared?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so, I downvoted it. I gave it the thumbs up.
It's not Reddit. You don't downvote things. You just
no, it's been downvoted.
Oh, I see what you mean. You put a thumbs down.
Yeah.
Habs and Sens regulation wins push the Canadiens' playoff probability from 69%, nice, to 87% according to ineffective math. Enormous night for Montreal. So since we've already started talking about this, Sanjay, what's it like to watch something you love die?
I don't know. I'll ask you in 2 weeks when the playoffs start.
Hey, well, at least I'll get to see playoffs, so I won't.
Oh man! Hey, I'll give you one stat. The Calgary Flames, are the first team to ever win a playoff series in Rogers Arena. So there's that.
Wow, how's that stat working for them? Hey, I wonder which players off that team are going to be there next year.
I mean, hey, we've won more playoff series in your home building. I'm just saying.
We've got more Stanley Cups.
Always comes back to the Stanley Cups, but y'all weren't even around when they won them. So
yes, actually, we
were.
We all were. That's the other thing. We're old enough to. How do you spell dynasty in Calgary? ONE. One.
Sorry, I gotta go, guys. Okay, this was fun. I had a
who's not talking?
Who's your favorite top 10 player in the NHL that's ever been on your team? Go ahead.
Top 10 player, what?
Of all time in the league that's ever played for your team. Go ahead.
Jaromir Jagr.
That's one. That is one. And you killed his career in the NHL. Good point.
His last goal was with Calgary, so I guess that's something.
Yeah, that was it.
Who else is top 10 that I could bring up? I don't know, like
that's
Canucks.
The point.
That's kind of rude, man. Like,
you're such a bitch. You were just like, blah, 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 screw your team, and then people say something to you, and you're like, that's rude, man. Like, you literally
we didn't have this podcast
troll people nonstop, and then you like, don't.
You remember in The Simpsons when Nelson doesn't get the part, and then he goes like, ha ha, to himself? Like, that's kind of what it feels like to me. So I think, you guys should have some sympathy for Nelson over here.
We did make our digs on you last episode when you weren't here. So, I mean, if
I saw it, I heard it was like the lowest rated episode though without me. So, you're welcome that I'm back.
I don't know. That could be true. I don't know. The other two guys went quiet, so it's a potential that is it.
Well, it depends on the Leaf quotient.
Best thing that could have happened in that moment.
Just silence. Like,
I don't know.
I really don't.
It wasn't. Yeah. But it wasn't the best either.
It was the highest rated.
You were missed.
Don't feed the ego.
Thank you. Maybe I should go change into my Bruins jersey into a Maple Leafs jersey now.
Yes, you should. Do it right now.
We're already 3 minutes into this, and this has already been exciting recording here.
Some of the best podcasting you'll ever see.
Yeah, exactly. How'd the podcast go? Oh, we just sat there insulting each other over our teams. So it's the same as every other podcast, I guess.
Exactly.
I bet that is a good place to start. Going into today, there was a chance that the Calgary Flames and even the Vancouver Canucks could technically surpass the kind of stumbling Montreal Canadiens and had a shot at fourth. But after today, those odds have changed as one of the teams Calgary was trying to essentially catch got another 2 points on them, and that looks harder and harder to do. Where are you guys at with the Calgary Flames? What are you feeling with them? Like, is this done now, or is the top four set finally? We've been saying this for a long time, but is this confirmation, or is there still a chance that things could change?
They're done. Cook them. They're done.
You know what? Here's the thing. Being a Flames fan my whole life is what they'll do to you is they'll give you false hope and then they'll take it away. The worst thing they could do now is go on a run where they win 6 of 8, however remaining games, miss the playoffs by a point, and draft like 20th. At this point in the season,
it's bad, man. It sucks.
Yeah.
Muskoka 5 for the Leafs did that every year after the lockout. They would go on a run leading up to the playoffs, but miss out by a few points every single season. They had the Muskoka 5 for the Leafs. And so they didn't get a great draft pick, but of course they didn't make the playoffs. So it sucks.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams that have the transition years where they're just not bad enough to get a player of substance, but they need that player to play right away, and they're plugged in. Mm-hmm. And the result is essentially you continue the same problem next year. Like, what is best for the Calgary Flames right now? Is it better that they make the playoffs, or is it better that they just bomb out and we like get a full reset here? Because I have to imagine that if they do not make the playoffs, that you are going to see a front office shuffle or a bloodletting of some kind.
I told you I had unfinished business.
Yeah, man. Like, you don't bring in Daryl Sutter for a rebuild. I don't think he would have agreed to come back if he thought the plan was to rebuild.
Oh, no. They offer you millions of dollars, you'd say no, for sure.
He's got money. He's got Stanley Cups. He has no reason to come back, you know? He just wanted that cup.
It's not like a lot of their core are old. Like Giordano is, but Gaudreau and Monahan and Kachuk, I mean, they're not
Giovanni, Dubé, like, I agree.
Hanifin, you know, they're all on the younger side. You know, so it's not really
but that's not working team for them.
No, it's not. But it's not like one of those teams where you're like, you know, they're trying to stick with like an aging core to continue to win. Like, this is a team that should be winning. So are they just not good enough?
Yeah. Who knows? I got a call from Bosnia, though.
Actually, everyone's been saying they've been getting tons of phone calls from like old Soviet countries today. So
I got Latvia and I got Tajikistan.
Do you want me to raise my hands, Ryan, so you know when to you can't pronounce Kazakhstan? Oh my god!
Have you not seen Borat before?
Oh, yeah, no, it's just tons. I don't know if you can see that, but I've got.
There's his personal number,
guys.
Phone
number on there on your screen. It went white anyway, so no one could see it. Let's just end the worst opening we've ever had, and welcome to Delayed Offside. Well, as we've discussed already, the playoffs are starting to look a little bit more and more set. That the Final Four for the North are going to be decided, as well as most of the other divisions as well. They actually seem to be pretty locked down. There's still some battles occurring, but for the most part, are the top three are at least locked in. And I think in this case in the North, we're basically set here. We're going to talk a little bit about matchups and essentially ideal matchups. So one of the things talked about was when you look at this, who is the best team for each matchup here? So we know that Toronto is probably going to be first. Winnipeg or Edmonton will be second, and then probably Montreal fourth. And let's say on the off chance Vancouver or Calgary makes it into the playoffs, one of them will most likely be in a fourth place spot, not higher. So let's just say a look at it from each team. Who is an ideal matchup for these? If I am the Toronto Maple Leafs, who do I want to play out of these 3 or 4 or 5 teams? Who are we thinking is the best matchup?
Well, if I'm the Leafs, I probably want to play the Edmonton Oilers. I think Edmonton kind of plays right into their hands as to the type of game they would like to play: wide open, skill, fast. You know, they're not going to shut you down. They're not going to bog things down, grind you out, that type of game. That's not really their style. And I think that plays into the Leafs' hands. And I mean, it's just been kind of as evidenced by the regular season games against Edmonton. You know, they like to play that style.
Sanjay, do you agree or disagree?
I agree.
No, man. I mean, the results kind of speak for themselves.
Sanjay.
Adam is just, you know, he's raring to go. You know, someone's talking smack about the Oilers.
Yeah.
You know,
before he was recorded, he was vibing quite hard. So you will see it in the Willie weigh-in after this. He is going to be like,
he's wasted all of his energy for the Willie weigh-in episodes.
That guy drank like 6 pots of coffee and then snorted 2 Red Bulls.
Plus, he's paced around his basement like 100 times already.
He's also scratching. He's scratching himself with caffeine withdrawal. He's like, let me talk about the Oilers. Let me talk about the Oilers.
There's like a beaten path around his basement.
One day when like they go through to have to replace his carpet, it's just going to be this path that he's walked for the way.
We're gonna be sponsored by carpet stores and
carpet or hardwood. It'll be like this nice dark wood and then just white patch from where his feet have worn out the wax. Very impressive. All right, so Sanjay, why are the Leafs happy why would they be happier to play the Oilers versus another team?
I just think results speak for themselves, and I think they've had a pretty good record against the Oilers this season. And they're not a team. Edmonton's not a team with a lot of playoff experience that they could take advantage of the Leafs, who also don't have a ton of playoff experience. So I think it's a good matchup for them.
I'm going to get you to argue the opposite. Why is that a bad matchup for Toronto?
I think because there's a burning fire within the Edmonton players because they have been shut down so much this year by Toronto. And I think there's a frustration and I want to prove this team wrong. And we saw that in the last 2 games they did play against Toronto. And I think if I was Toronto, I'd be scared to play teams like Edmonton. You don't want to make McDavid mad. You see it and he makes you pay.
I seen a smirk come from Ryan earlier in the segment, so I'd like to hear his rebuttal.
I was just laughing at the line. They have a burning fire. It's very poetic.
You know what? The way I talk.
Burning fire. The passion
Fire's
for the
our
puck.
thing, man. Get your own, okay? Don't
The
take
other thing against Edmonton, I would say, is, where they really burn you is on the power play. And as you know, once you get into the playoffs, you're not going to get as many power play opportunities. So they're going to have to become a better 5-on-5 team in the playoffs or rely more on 5-on-5 goals. And that's where the Leafs thrive, is at 5-on-5. And it's at the special teams that they're struggling right now. So that plays into the Leafs' hands in the playoffs.
Adam, it really hurts this podcast when you can't give your full attention to it and you just stare at your phone the whole time. I think you need to.
I'm not staring at my phone, but you know what?
There you are. If you're watching the score of the game, you clearly are, because your eyes keep drifting.
I'm watching the game. Yeah,
I can't believe that you're not paying
6-1,
attention
man.
to.
No, listen. I got a point. Pilon says 5-on-5 scoring.
Put your hand up and I'll mute him again. Just say the word.
Pilon says 5-on-5 scoring. They've got 6. They've got 6 even strength goals tonight.
Oh, one game against the Jets, who don't have...
One game proves Adam's points for everything.
Yeah.
Right? Like goalie gets a shutout, like he's going to have shutouts all year. Every game is going to be a shutout from this point. He's just got quiet now because he's just like...
I was going to say that about Mike Smith until they scored on him.
Adam's got that burning fire now.
Adam's got the burning fire. Yeah. Let Adam against the Leafs.
Is that what you're drinking? Burning fire?
Okay, let's jump around a little bit here then instead. Let's go to I was going to go in order of the standings, but I think since we're talking about Edmonton so much, what about Edmonton? Who is their dream matchup and how come? Let's start with Adam so he can get some of that burning fire out of himself.
It's the Winnipeg Jets.
Adam, eyes on the podcast, buddy. We can see when you're looking away.
After this game.
Sanjay, do you want to start counting?
After this game.
Three times already.
3
times already.
Okay. After this
Four.
After this game, they're going to be 6-2 against the Winnipeg Jets.
Six times.
After this game, they're going to be 6-2 against the Jets. They have the Jets numbers. The Jets.
He can't stop looking at the screen. He's just like,
I know.
He's McDrooling. He's literally Connor McDrooling right there. He's just like can't help himself.
No, you know what? The Jets are snake bitten against the Oilers. They can't seem to beat them this year. They're missing Ehlers and Lowry as well. And it looks like Ehlers is done for the season. So I just, that's the team. Like Montreal seems to really give Edmonton a hard time. Toronto has given Edmonton a really difficult time. I think what you need is the Jets in the first round. You get by them. They bump your confidence. That series bumps your confidence, and you go into the next round against possibly, either the Leafs or the Canadiens. Probably the Canadiens, because we know how Toronto plays in the playoffs. Am I right?
7 times, 7 looks, 8 looks. Okay, Sanjay, you counter him. Why do you think the Jets aren't a good matchup?
They got playoff experience. They've made the conference finals a couple years ago. You could argue they have the best goalie in the division and the reigning Vezina Trophy winner in Hellebuck. Their center depth is deep with Scheifele, Stastny. They got Dubois. They're a pretty good team. And yeah, maybe it hasn't been a good matchup, but maybe the matchups have fallen kind of Edmonton's way. But playoffs is a different story, man. It's a different animal. Remember years ago, Pittsburgh had swept the Bruins, and then in the conference final, Boston won that series 4 straight or in 5. So regular season, throw it out the window, means nothing, absolutely nothing. And playoffs, brand new season.
A little bit, just a little bit of a comment on what you said here, which I think is kind of important. So we talked back about playoff experience, specifically that Winnipeg Jet team, how far they went. There's actually a thing they showed here on Sportsnet for the Oilers Jets game, and they essentially went over how many of those players are gone from that team that went on that far. And you have to say, like, this is a very different Winnipeg Jets team than it was. Like, that was a hard-hitting, big, strong, like, beat the crap out of you.
Shut it down ago.
And it was 3 years ago, and they've lost a lot of those players. Like, I think we have to start thinking that this is a different team. The other thing I'm going to say is the last, I don't know, is Hellebuck still in net, Adam?
No, Laurent Brossoit started the third.
So that's about twice now that he's been pulled in the last 3 games. We've been always talking that fatigue was potentially an issue in Winnipeg. Are we starting to see it, Ryan? Is this just like a hiccup here or there because players are out, or is Hellebuck really hit that point where he can't just bail them out anymore?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, he's had a fantastic year. If this continues going into the playoffs, then maybe I'll say, yeah, you might be right. I mean, hey, listen, like he's had to stop more shots than I think any goaltender in the NHL right now. Like that defense, and you might be right. That defense in front of him is brutal. They are a joke. And no, they're so bad. People who didn't see the last like 2 episodes don't get that.
Somebody's gonna turn this on and be like, "Why are they laughing? These guys."
Yeah, that's not even funny. It wasn't a funny line. No, but it's such a bad defense. But on the flip side, I mean, he still played tremendously this entire season. Yeah, he's been pulled twice, but it's been against 2 offensive powerhouses. I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. I'm not really sure if that's true or not, but we'll find out.
Well, since the Jets are the conversational topic and feast du jour for the Oilers, I think it's probably likely that most are in consent here that the Montreal Canadiens are who the Jets would prefer to play. I believe their record against Montreal is quite substantial as well. They have the 5-2 record against them.
Now, does no one believe, sorry to interrupt, Baron, but I'm just curious, does no one believe that Vancouver can get in? Everyone was talking about how close Calgary was until they lost tonight. Vancouver has a higher point percentage than Calgary does at this point.
And more games in hand.
And way more games in hand. But the issue, I think, and I think this is why they're not getting that much respect, is because their schedule to end the season is so brutal. So many games, back-to-back games against tough competition. Maybe no one believes that they can pull it out because they'll just be exhausted by the end of it. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
They do have 5 games at hand. Montreal's played 46 and Vancouver's at 41. It's doable. You saw what they did in that first game back against the Leafs. After
2 games against the Leafs.
Yeah. So, I wouldn't count them out like I would maybe the Flames, but,
Get him in. It's fine. I'm writing him down. I'm writing him down. Adam.
Just adding his enemy list. Just
yeah.
Steve Buscemi, right?
If we do the Steve Buscemi makeup thing, I will.
Yeah. You're gonna start getting hate comments on your YouTube. Willie weighs in, Adam. You're like, oh, this wasn't very good.
yeah, exactly. It'll be like all these like bad comments. Yeah.
I'll be right back, guys. I have to run off real quick here. I'll be right back. Keep going without me.
No worries.
No problem. Yeah, you keep that jersey on that kid.
Okay, thank God he left. We're just gonna mute him in case there's any.
No more Leafs talk. It's over.
I don't need to hear him get yelled at. I told you to get off that podcast.
I didn't even give you permission to sign up for it.
I'll give you guys a conversation because I really was hoping for Pilon for this. Maybe we'll see he'll be back in time. But Pilon's choice for the matchup with the Leafs was actually the Oilers because they've done so well against them this season. But you're talking about scheduling, and we're like, okay, Vancouver's got a terrible schedule. The Montreal Canadiens do not have a good schedule heading into the end of this year either. And my guess is that they are going to have to play very hard up until those last 2 or 3 games, depending on the standings. Because if Vancouver jumps and is all of a sudden right there, you can't take a night off with your best players. Whereas all of a sudden, if there's some space there, Montreal doesn't have to actually tire its guys out in order to get those final games in. Do you think it's better for the Leafs to play a tired Montreal Canadian team, or is the matchup because of the Oilers a better choice?
That's a good question. I think playing the tired Montreal team, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. Montreal hasn't really looked that good the last 2 weeks. And Edmonton has. I hate to say it, but if you're comparing the two teams, yeah, Edmonton looks stronger. So I'd rather take my chances with Montreal. I know there's no fans there, but just the history between the two, you can't tell me people in the Leafs organization, them at first place, Montreal at fourth place. There's probably a little extra incentive to beat Montreal in the playoffs because, you know, it hasn't happened in how many years. And when they play, typically Montreal was the one who won. So I think, you know, just that factor, knowing that you could beat the Montreal Canadiens if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, like that's a huge thing, right? That's a huge psyche for them.
Yeah, I do agree with that as well, but I also think it's something that they do fear because Montreal has played so well against them this year as well. So, you know, it seems like it's weird to me because Edmonton's been probably the strongest team since January in the North Division. And yeah, Toronto just had their number. And I don't know. I'd be really interested to see that series, but also Montreal, Toronto. I think Montreal would really push Toronto, if not shut them out.
My guess is that Sportsnet would love Toronto, Montreal in the first round, Toronto, Edmonton in the second round.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they want, for revenue purposes, you want Toronto to go as far as possible. And at the same time, the fact that it's original six matchup is always a huge draw. It's a traditional rival, huge draw. And then it's up and coming superstars is your second draw. So you have two huge points that you can make to actually kind of make cash on it. I think that's probably the way they're leaning. We're going to jump down to Montreal Canadiens, and as we said, that this is a tougher team. They are kind of more built for the playoffs. They're lacking some scoring, we already know that, but because of that playoff potential here, are we thinking that who do they really want to play if they're going to get in it?
Edmonton, 100%.
Now why?
They just seem to have their number this year. Every time, I think, you know, look at McDavid. He's had that one highlight reel goal, but his points against every other team has been out of this world. And against Montreal, you know, I have to look at the stats, but he hasn't really lit them up like he has the rest of the North. So
correct.
Just that factor alone, that if they're able to shut down McDavid, you win the series, man. So
well, what is the reason that McDavid and Draisaitl can't get going against this team?
It seemed like when they started the year off and they played the first couple games against Montreal really paid close attention and tried to keep those guys out of the center of the ice in the defensive zone. They were not getting any good chances. It was keep them out of that midsection where those like that home plate area, and bang, they were done. It was the most boring hockey to watch, but it worked against them. And it hasn't since. Like, they've started to break out of that, and they've gotten a lot more chances in the previous two games that they played against the Montreal Canadiens. But man, I was worried. I was like, geez, if this is like Montreal's going to like win 9 games this season against the Oilers if they play like this.
I do think that like Montreal defends against the rush much better than the other teams do, and they do push those guys out. But they, like, if you watch it, when McDavid and Draisaitl are always playing on the rush, like, they have that opportunity that has worked for them for so many teams. I think they have a hard time looking for other methods to score, and I don't think that they actually have a ton more. Like, they become so reliant on one particular style that they're not a team that really can beat you 3 or 4 different ways. And I do think that is where the defense really comes in. Like, that defense can play hard, but I also think like one of the big conversations at Edmonton media was the cross-checking on Draisaitl. None of that got called against Shea Weber, who's a vet, who's respected, who plays pretty dirty. Like, but I mean, not like, oh, he's dirty, take him off the ice dirty, but like,
he's not Corey Perry dirty.
No, but he's sneaky in a different way. And he's like, there's just like something that Chris Pronger could do that you couldn't do if you were a rookie, right? Like, and that's what I mean by that. So I do think that is a tough matchup. I think that they would love to play Edmonton because I think that they would put a power move against there. I also think they'd love to play Toronto, and I think they will be happy going in fourth. You look at this team. This is a team that knocked off the Penguins last year, who were in a much better place than the Canadiens were. And if Carey Price ever does recover, as much as he's listed as overrated, he can still win you a series.
Yes.
So I think that has to be considered.
Yeah, I would agree.
What does everybody want to take a bet that Pilon is doing right now? My guess is he's using the toilet.
I was.
He's searching up Leaf stats.
Oh, yes. He's he's angrily blogging about the Leafs somewhere on a different computer. Hate you guys. So,
LeafsChat.com or something.
so let's move on to something a little bit different. In the South, Robin Lehner kind of drew a little bit of heat and then kind of backed himself up, I would say, when he put out a complaint about the NHL's COVID policy and how it affects mental health, in the way of saying that they basically feel like prisoners because of how rigid the rules are, and made the argument that if you're fully vaccinated or partially vaccinated, you shouldn't have to live by the same rules as someone who wasn't vaccinated. And he pointed out that the NBA itself had a complete different list of criteria for teams, why they were able to and what they were able to do and what they couldn't do. What side are you on in this coin here? Like, are you thinking that he's right, that, you know what, you should be able to do certain things? Or do you think it's the other side being like, no, there are rules and you have to follow them for different reasons or specific reasons?
Well, there's rules. You have to follow them for the safety of the league and for the safety of the team and the families that that are affected by those teams. You saw it with Vancouver, right? Also, the thing is too, if you're partially vaccinated, you've got one shot. You've built up an immunity after two weeks after that shot, and you still need a second dose 6 weeks later. I like, it's just ignorant to think that once you got that shot in your arm that you're completely protected. There's, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? But a sense of entitlement there that, you know, is also kind of scary to think about, because not only with that thinking are you putting yourself at danger, your family at danger, but you're putting like your team in danger, your other teams in danger, the league in danger. Just follow the rules. Who cares? Yeah, it's frustrating, but you don't think everyone else in the world right now is feeling that frustration? Like,
what do you think on this?
It's tough because, like, well, we're in Canada and he's in the States, so that's one differential. But like, if you know, most of the Americans have 2 shots by now, and you know, you look at stuff that's a
little if, but they do have, most people have one
not
shot.
Lost, but yeah, like a lot of people do have 2 shots or 2 vaccines. So you look at some places in like Texas where they had like the ballparks open and stuff like that. And I don't think he's saying like, oh, I should be allowed to like do everything, but you know, if you have 2 vaccination shots and you're fully protected, you know, why couldn't he just go to the grocery store or go out to a restaurant on the road and get a coffee? You know, still abiding by the social distancing rules and making sure that it's safe. You know, I don't see a harm in that. If he's had 2 shots and most of the team have, for me, I would say okay.
We welcome back street reporter Ryan Pilon as he's here to discuss the tiebreaker here. That's okay. I had to leave like 10 seconds ago too.
Oh, did you?
Cat fight, yeah.
They were probably like texting each other. Like,
I was just like, God, come back. They're so boring. But
when I was talking, I was like, God, I really hope Sanjay is listening to me because I am talking.
Well, it was just don't worry. I could hear a cat like growling, and I'm like, okay. And then I was like, oh no, they're fighting really badly. So I had to like click it off and just go break it up. Ryan, so we're talking about Robin Lehner's comments about COVID quarantine. Now Sanjay saying, if you're quarantined, you should be allowed to go. And Adam says, no, like there's set rules for a reason. You should be able to follow rules. Where do you fall in line with this argument?
You know, it's a tough one. It's kind of like that discussion we were having last week with the Vancouver Canucks arguing that they shouldn't have to come back so soon after COVID. It's that whole like business versus humanity argument, right? In one sense, I get it. Like, it's a business. You're trying to keep these players healthy because, you know, if players get sick, now you have to cancel games. If you cancel enough games and the season is in doubt and, you know, there's money at risk. I get all that. But at the same time, another cat fight. But I mean, at the same time,
that was your daughter.
What's that?
I thought that was your daughter yelling in the background.
Well, I hear some more yelling going on upstairs, but
oh my God.
I think it's just my son right now. I'm listening for my daughter's cries too. That's when I had to step on out. But on the other hand, like I felt so bad for Lehner, like when you were listening to him, right? And like the mental health issues that he's struggling with. You know, he apologized after, he basically called it a prison, like having to stay in his hotel room on the road. And I wondered, like, if they can't let up entirely for them, like, why can't you just let up a little bit? Like, why can't you at least give them like a buddy system or something where you get like at least a roommate to hang out with? And I mean, if they both get sick, then that's 2 players off the roster, as opposed to, everyone has to be in isolation. And really, when you think about it, these players they're not spaced 6 feet apart on the bench. They're side by side. They're not wearing masks. They're spitting. They're hugging face to face after goals. Like, at the end of the day, like, why does that make sense that, okay, they can do all that during the game, but now you're at the hotel, now you have to be by yourself?
Well, doesn't it a lot have to do with more or less your testing? Like, once you're tested before you play, you kind of have free range. But if I'm at home and then I go for like a walk in the park, and like, let's say something happens and I contract it and I go to your house and I hang out with you, I'm potentially exposing you. And then there's that break in that chain. Yeah,
I get that. Like, I get when you're at your home, but at least when you're at your home, like, hope, when you're with your family and stuff, why not when you're on the road, the team is like, you're in a bubble. Like, all you can do is stay in the hotel, but you can still hang out with your teammates in their rooms. Why can't they do that? I don't get that. I don't get why they have to be isolated in their rooms on the road. Make it like you're, a team bubble. They're not allowed to leave the hotel. They're sitting together in the airplane or on the bus or whatever, and staying in the hotel and traveling to and from the hotel to the arenas. They can't go out and all that, but at the end of the day, they're together in the dressing rooms. They're together on the ice during the games. Why can't they be together in the hotel rooms?
Here's a question for you. Like, and this is just an actual thought point. I'm not sure where it changes anything, but the NBA has a completely different set of rules, but they still have players struck down by the COVID policy. The NHL has a tighter set of rules, and yet they're still having players struck down by the policy. Vancouver, for example, well, there's lots of stories that Vancouver had a break in their like that certain things were not done properly, and that there are some issues with that. But also the fact that like the goalie in Colorado has had COVID right now, so he's in isolation still too. Things are still occurring that are causing it to kind of be shut down in some way. Part of me wonders, is it just the difference in sport? Like, hockey seems to rely so much more on a wide bench than it does on a small amount of players. Do you think that that's the reason why the NBA is able to have more freedoms when it comes to this?
That's an interesting point. I mean, I don't know. Like, is it the same as football? Because football is similar to hockey, where there's like a ton of players that you rely on, but they kind of just, I don't know, like what they did, if it was similar to basketball or hockey.
Well, they got hit pretty hard though too. Like, Denver Broncos had no quarterback one game, right? Like, that's not exactly a win. Can you imagine, like, if you have no goalie for your game because of COVID? You're like, be like Ottawa getting a Nisimov all dolled up in your gear for playing, which would have been great if it had happened.
Oh yeah, they would have won too if you went in.
That would have been so sick.
I wonder if
Yeah,
I wonder if it's that, or if it's just because more of the teams are in the U.S. and in NBA, and it's a more U.S. centric league, and obviously there's some states that are just a lot more lenient than here in Canada. Like, I don't know if you guys watch wrestling at all, but at WrestleMania they had like thousands of fans in attendance in Florida there, and
anything goes in Florida.
Always Florida. Always Florida.
So
that's America's Alberta. I'm just kidding.
There's only 7 Canadian teams, but at the same time, I mean, there's just, I think you would take into account what Canada's doing a little bit more than maybe the NBA would, where yes, you only have the Toronto Raptors. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just more US centric too.
Yeah, fair enough. I think you're kind of like putting up a bunch of different things together to see what works.
Throw it against the wall, see what sticks.
Throw it against the wall and let it ride.
Yeah.
One of the things that's popped up here is, and I don't know if I'm saying his name, but I think it's Kaprizov. For the Minnesota Wild. He is having an outstanding career and has literally
a career.
Hold up. He's actually been playing professional hockey for a few years. So screw you guys. Secondary. This actually goes to the point that I was going to make, which is a career year, whatever. But he's probably the lead right now for the Calder race. And there's a lot of issues on the fact that he's had a career prior to this, despite what you guys say, playing in the KHL for so long. Do you think it really should matter that a player is older in their rookie season? Should it just be like the young players that are eligible for this? Or is it fine that you can go play for 5 or 7 years and then still have a chance?
Well, there is still a minimum age.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you couldn't get 5 years in another league.
Right. What is the minimum age?
I think it's 24. I think. I don't know.
Is that what Kaprizov is? Is he 24?
No, I don't know if he's even
23,
old.
I think.
I think he's
24. He's 24. He's born April 26, 1997.
Well,
so it's his birthday today.
And just like that,
So he was 23. But,
he's still within the range.
Yeah.
So, but do you think age, like if someone plays professional hockey for another league at a certain age, that they should be allowed to be a winner in the Calder? Yes or no?
Absolutely.
yes, why not?
different game.
Yeah, okay, well, that's going to make for terrible radio, but still, I really don't get the argument about the age. Like, I just don't. Like, he's so
well,
good.
I mean, he's matured more
good.
physically, right? And he has more experience than these rookies being called up who, I mean, you guys, I'm sure, remember what it was, your size coming out of high school, like a lot thinner and leaner and don't have a lot of muscle mass on you. And again, not a lot of experience playing against men. So I get that, and that they do have an advantage there. I'm not sure why they picked 24 as the age limit, but
because you're bringing over guys from Finland who are like 36 and like smoke darts and are like just
right. But like, why not 23 or 22 or, younger age? But probably, I mean, some guys don't get into the league, and some guys don't get into the league until they're 24, right? So is it really fair for those guys? They don't get a shot at the Calder because it took them a little while longer to develop.
If it's two players, let's say there are two players that are relatively equal. I'm not saying perfectly equal, but relatively equal. Should a younger age be considered over the older age?
That's ageism. I don't believe in that.
It's because you're old.
Exactly.
I'm like the oldest one here. Actually, no, it's Adam. Adam is the oldest one here.
I think it would only matter to the GM. If you're a GM and you're like, okay, I have this 18-year-old kid who put up 60 points and this 24-year-old kid who put up 60 points. If you're a GM, okay, exponential growth, you think, okay, the 18-year-old has room to improve more than the 24-year-old, which isn't always the case. But in terms of the Calder, just look at it 1 year in isolation and remove all the other factors. I mean, you don't do that for the Hart Trophy. You're not like, well, McDavid's, putting up these points, but Crosby's 33 and, he's older. And so he's having like a heck of a year, or Thornton relatively to other 40-year-olds, he's having a heck of a year. So I don't think you should include it for the Calder as well.
Do you think he has changed how Minnesota hockey is being played right now? Like not the hockey on a whole, but like Minnesota Wild hockey.
Yes.
How come?
Well, just yes. No, he has, because watching him bring a flair that wasn't there before. It was always boring hockey, boring shut down, like wait for your chance hockey, and there was nothing really. It's meat and potatoes, right? Whereas this guy's brought a flair. You see him in areas on the ice that weren't really explored that much by players in Minnesota, because they were so set in structure and where they were supposed to be. I think he brings more creativity to hockey in Minnesota, and I think that's a good thing.
And exploring those areas they hadn't explored before sets their fire below.
Fire below? I don't think that was quite the term, but I think you're close.
Isn't that what he said?
He didn't say they have a fire below, though.
He said
fire
like
burning or
fire
whatever.
Burning below, whatever.
I think you need to see a doctor for that one.
Below. Just making a reference that doesn't exist, and that's why the sky is high.
That goes enough.
Is that comment about the sky? What you're talking about? No, fair enough. As I say, we're going to do a little bit of a segment here, which is essentially just like a question time period. It's not an Ask a GM, because it's not really from a GM view, and it's not an argue the opposites, or we could do it as an argue the opposites technically. No, I don't think so. We're just going to do it as a question period because I think that works the best. But before we do that segment, we're going to finish off with the last segment that we have on this piece of paper, which is playoff depth. And when we're talking about playoff depth, one of the things that came up was the idea of depth forwards and which team has the best depth at forward. So I'm going to have each of you make a case separately about a team and why it has the best forward depth. We're just doing forwards, not defense, not goalies. Don't talk about a goaltender. I don't want to hear about it. Just forward depth and why they have better forward depth than the other teams.
In the league or in the North Division?
In the North Division specifically.
Okay.
Okay, Sanjay's ready because he said okay. So
this is easy. I'm glad I'm going first because I don't know who I picked for second. But I hate to say it, but it's Toronto. You look at that lineup. Anytime you have like Hall of Famers or close to Hall of Famers, like Joe Thornton and Jason Spezza in your third and fourth lines, like that's crazy good depth. And you throw in a Wayne Simmons, who, he at the beginning of the year he was amazing. He was getting a goal a game, and he was tough, physical. And you have those three players in your bottom six. I mean, good luck anyone else trying to compete with that. So I hate to say it, but I'm going to go Toronto.
Well, I like you, Sanjay. I wish I could go Toronto. I'm going to go with the Montreal Canadiens, though.
Oh, damn it. Now I got
forward depth?
For forward depth, yeah.
Let's hear it. Adam, you said they had no secondary scoring. You cannot tell me now you think that they have the most secondary depth. Like that was literally your complaint all season.
I was looking for old people.
All right, well, here's my argument.
Ryan, go ahead.
Okay, so, number one, the fact that their leading goal scorer, Tyler Toffoli, he's played a significant amount of time in the bottom six. That's a testament to how deep their forward depth is. Their top six have scored 61% of the team's 5-on-5 goals this year. That's actually the lowest of all four Canadian teams who are currently in a playoff spot. And not only are they getting great goal scoring from their bottom six, but great possession numbers as well. They dominate at possession. So, the problem with this team isn't that they don't have scoring depth. It's just that they don't have a lot of elite goal scorers, and that's their issue. But when you're talking about depth, they have the best depth in the North Division.
All right, Adam, take your shot.
I'm going to go with the Oilers. They have the most forward depth in the league. It doesn't. Don't you dare. That's exactly it. Connor McDavid, generational talent.
That's not depth, though.
Shut your mouth and let me talk.
You cut him off more than anyone cuts off Ryan. It's always you. He can cut you off back. That's equal play.
Who, me?
Thank you, Baron.
You cut Ryan off all the time. Let him cut you off.
Okay, fine.
Awkward.
Continue.
Are you done?
I'm done.
Are you done? I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make one little snippet. That's all.
Permission to continue.
Yeah.
Okay. The Edmonton.
No, you're wrong.
And I'm going to tell you why.
You could see that joke coming a mile away, and it was still good. It was still good.
All right, go.
Oh, boy. We have Josh Archibald, who played with the Pittsburgh Penguins and has gone on some runs with them, with the Kitters. And we got Alex Chiasson, who won a Stanley Cup with the Washington Capitals, although he wasn't on for the final game, I believe. And then you got James Neal, who brings an abundance of leadership in that regard with his stint in Vegas, in Pittsburgh, in Dallas. Mike Smith, who's battled with the worst of the worst. Oh, no goalie. Sorry, my bad. Sorry.
He passes the puck so good. He's just like a fourth forward.
He is. He said forward depth. Okay. And then, you look at guys like
Darnell Nurse all of a sudden here in about 3 seconds.
Oh my God. Okay. And then guys like Kyler Yamamoto. I'm just kidding. But those are some guys that were brought in, within the last couple seasons that I see making an impact within the playoffs. That remains to be seen, but I think they could bring that depth scoring that the Oilers are kind of looking for. But I think, honestly, they're going to lean on a lot of their younger players that have been leading this team.
I'm going to go for a different group here. I'm going to go for the Winnipeg Jets, because when they are healthy, I think that they have probably the deepest forward core. Their third line with a guy like Perreault, who you would basically figure was on waivers at a certain point this year, is probably one of the best third lines in the NHL. Like it shuts down. There was a point in the season where they were not on for a goal against, and that wasn't like early in the season. That was like mid to late here in the season. That's how well it had done. Nick Ehlers, outside of the fact that he's injured now, had legitimately been so good that you've barely missed Patrick Laine. I don't know that Scheifele and Wheeler are having quite the season that they should be, but Stastny's given them more depth, even if he's in a second or third line role. I just feel like that top 9 is strong. And even their bottom 3 doesn't have to be that bad. But the goals against outside of that, the top line having some bad matchups with the Oilers is actually quite decent. And I just feel like from a top to bottom, that is a great forward core. And I think that they have depth on all lines, and they can play against you in a lot of different ways. So that's why I think Winnipeg Jet has the best forward core.
Can we go worse now?
Absolutely. You go first, Ryan.
So my worst is the Edmonton Oilers. Here is why. All right. Their top 6 have scored.
Matthews, Sorry,
could you not interrupt me, Adam? Please.
Just sit back and watch.
Adam Brooks.
Yeah, nice, Sanjay.
Hey, Brooksy. Can we talk about Brooksy later? Okay, so their top 6 have scored 70% of their 5-on-5 goals, and that's the biggest differential amongst the 4 playoff teams in the North. They've only gotten 22 5-on-5 goals among their bottom 6 forwards this season. That's the lowest amongst all 4 teams. And not only are they not scoring, but all their players in the bottom 6 have terrible possession stats. They're constantly hemmed in their own end. And out of the 11 depth forwards for Edmonton, only 4 haven't been outscored. And that's Ennis, Kahara, Neal, and Russell. The rest, they're all leaking goals, boys. And I do think the Oilers have better offensive depth this year than they have in the past. But that's mostly in their top 6 to help out the scoring with McDavid and Draisaitl. I think they have a lot more help than they've had in the past. But again, when I'm thinking depth, I'm looking in the bottom 6, and that's where the Oilers are weak.
All right, Adam, you have a different team to pick? Well, because you picked the Oilers as the best. So who's the worst forward team, or team for forward depth? Sorry.
Oh, I'm going to pick the Toronto Maple Leafs. And this is simply because they've gone out and picked up broken players, except for perhaps Jason Spezza, right? Jumbo Joe, I need a crutch to get me down the ice is really, what has he done other than being demoted from the 1st to the 4th line? No,
he is now the oldest goal scorer in Leafs history, passing Alan Stanley.
And then look at Wayne Simmons, hasn't been the same since he broke his wrist in front of the net. And then Spezza's been all right, but it's not the Spezza of old. It's just old Spezza.
That's actually good.
That's it. I want to end on that note.
Sanjay, do you want to bring a rational argument to this thing? Go ahead.
Oh, sure.
Sanjay.
Yeah.
Sanjay.
What do you
thinking Sanjay is Adam? Like, they don't even sound the same. Like, Sanjay. Yes. No. Sanjay.
He's just looking at the hair. He's like, oh, Sanjay, there's the hair. Okay, it's my turn. I got hair too.
Adam's screen is just pictures of him over top of us.
Yeah. His face over top of McDavid's after scoring a goal. Barron's over Draisaitl.
Do I want to be? Go ahead.
For me, worse than the North, I would say Ottawa, because they're last place. So maybe that's the reason. I don't know. I actually think Calgary has pretty decent depth. Vancouver too. Everyone has pretty decent. I would say Edmonton too. Like, not to like pile on, but like you guys are pretty high right now, so it's nice to kind of say something negative about the Oilers. But everything runs through McDavid and Draisaitl on that team, and you look at those bottom 6, they're gonna have to come up big in the playoffs. So let's see if they can do it. Because if you look at that series against Chicago, McDavid did everything in that series. He was really good. and they still lost in 4. So
They also split up one of the hottest lines in hockey and then put them together for 10 minutes in the final game.
It was awful.
A team that was on a heater of like unprecedented proportions and split.
Well, there was a break,
man. Trade deadline.
The Oilers,
but it doesn't matter. They still split the lineup. The lineup never played together again after the trade deadline.
the Oilers are more like an NBA team than an NHL team, where you have like a couple superstars that can lead you to championships, and like a bunch of guys on the bench.
You say they can lead you to championships.
That's what they're going to have to do. If they're going to win championships, it's got to be McDavid and Draisaitl.
Okay, but I'll make that point. I'll make that point again. Everyone's always like, "Well, the bottom 6." How much ice time is that bottom 6 getting? Not a lot. Versus
that's the problem.
That's exactly it.
But is it? Not if you're producing. Yeah. It really isn't if you're producing.
And eventually,
as long as they don't get fatigued
and the truth
worn down or injured.
In a shortened season, it's already a shortened season. They've had 2 weeks off basically where they haven't played any games. I think fatigue is not going to be an issue on that part. But I will state this: a bottom 6 just has to stay flat. No more, no less. And that has been the issue in Edmonton since probably the Chiarelli days. And my guess is this year that will be something that gets cleaned up a little bit more.
Absolutely will be.
Hopefully, anyways, because if not, then there is problems galore. Okay, we're going to do our question period, which is essentially just your thoughts on a couple different topics around the NHL. None of these are very big or set by any means, but we're going to go with that anyways. So we're going to start with this one. Patrick Wallace apparently reached out to a new agency, and he's trying to promote himself as either a head coach or as a GM. Considering how things ended up in Colorado and how he left the organization, does he deserve another shot in either of those roles in the NHL ever again? Why or why not? Let's start with Adam on this one.
I know the man keeps burning bridges. It's a recipe for disaster. He's good for a year and then it's done. And that's it. I don't think it's a good idea.
Sanjay?
Maybe not for coach, but GM. I think the guy's got some insight and he could be valuable. Maybe not GM right off the start, but an assistant GM and work his way up like Sakic did. That would be a good idea.
I liked him as a coach. Bring him back. I thought he was very entertaining behind the bench and innovative too. Like, remember, he was the first guy to start polling the goalie with like 3 minutes left in a game. Like before that, you would wait until a minute left and then you would pull a goalie. And it was Waugh that started pulling the goalie early. And now every team's doing it. You're starting to see goalies pulled 2 minutes left to play. I thought he was very innovative, and the Colorado Avalanche were pretty good under him, at least in that 1 year.
1 year. I think the way he left the way he left, he basically sewered that team for a year, left them in a terrible position, and they lucked out in a lot of ways in the sense that they were able to like get certain guys traded, but also to bring in a coach who's actually worked really well with their guys in Jared Bednar. I honestly think, considering it's an old boys club to some degrees, he probably deserves to sit on the sidelines for a little bit. Injuries are starting.
Freeman is a goalie coach.
Yeah, sure.
Why
Maybe
not?
he's good. I don't know. Probably would.
Why don't you just stop the puck?
So at this time of year, injuries are starting to creep up. Things are starting to get a little bit bad, but we're heading into playoffs, so it's a tough time to have injuries. Which is a bigger loss for their team right now, and why? Patterson for the Vancouver Canucks, Nick Ehlers for the Jets, Hanifin for the Flames, Cassian for the Oilers, Bogosian for the Leafs, or Galchenyuk for the Canadiens.
It's Ehlers for the Winnipeg Jets for me. He's been such an impact player and has created a really great line in the second unit with the Jets. I believe he plays with Kopp and Lowry, and if I'm not mistaken, and he's been scoring at a great pace this season. So that's a huge loss, and we saw it tonight as well.
Baron, who did you say is injured for the Canadiens?
Bogosian.
Galchenyuk.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no,
for the Leafs. Yeah,
not Galchenyuk. Sorry, Gallagher.
Gallagher. Oh, okay.
Gallagher, not Galchenyuk.
Yeah, I was confused. I was like, "What?" Okay.
You're like, does he still play on that team?
What?
No, sorry, it was meant to be Gallagher.
Oh, okay,
Gallagher.
That makes sense.
But Galchenyuk used to play for the Canadiens, so
he played for everyone.
He did. Yeah,
pretty much. Okay, go ahead there, Pilon.
I guess I'll go Pettersson. He's Vancouver's most dynamic forward, and they're going to need all the help they can get if they're actually going to make a push for the playoffs. And without him, I think it's going to be pretty tough. Otherwise, I'd say Gallagher too, because they're trying to hold on, and he's their best goal scorer. I mean, those are both really tough losses, especially when you're fighting for playoff lives, your playoff life.
Sanjay?
I'm going to go with Hanifin. Like, Ehlers is already in a playoff spot. Winnipeg is. He can take the rest off. They're probably not going to move up, switch with Edmonton, but they're going to probably play Edmonton. Hanifin, they're really testing the Flames' depth, and you have players like Nestorov, Stone, and Valimaki who have to play like big minutes, whereas Hanifin was, you could argue, their number one defenseman this year. So, fortunately, it's I'm going to say Hanifin.
I'm going to go with Gallagher, I think, because Montreal has really missed him, and I think it's very apparent. Even those 3 games against Calgary, that is something that they would have definitely I think it would have made the games a little more interesting, to say the least. I don't know if it would have changed the outcome, but I think there would have been a different style of play that just occurs with him. I think he creates havoc, and he kind of makes them a little more fun to watch. So I made an unpopular opinion to the group, and Sanjay disagreed with me. And I said that I think Steve Yzerman's overrated, in the sense that if you were to go through lists of like great all-time players, you would pick all of them ahead of Yzerman. Who would you rather have? Gordie Howe or Yzerman? Gordie Howe. Gretzky or Yzerman? Gretzky. Messier or Yzerman? Messier.
Whoa.
Yager, Yzerman. Yager. Lemieux
I take
or
Yzerman over
Lemieux.
Messier.
Bobby Orr or Yzerman? Bobby Orr.
I take Yzerman over Messier.
Anyways, that's my unpopular opinion. Lidstrom or Yzerman? Lidstrom. That's my unpopular opinion. What is one unpopular opinion that you have about hockey or the NHL?
Who'd you like to start?
Oh, I think you already have one locked in, whereas I always feel like Sanjay and Adam have to think whenever I ask the question. I don't know why, but I feel like you actually read the notes. So I'm going to go with
sometimes,
you,
except for last episode when I didn't. Yeah, I had to think on this one. I have an unpopular opinion, and that's that I like the shootout. And I know a lot of NHL fans do not like the shootout, and I get why. It's a crapshoot, and it's a skills game at that point, and points are on the board for it. And I get the whole point as to why you don't like it. But for me, I love anticipation. I love drama, and with the shootout, I'm sitting on the edge of my seat, waiting for the player to skate off towards the goalie and make that shot. And is it going to go in or is it not? And then you do it all over again and over again. And if you go into extra rounds, even the drama builds and it builds, and I love it. And sometimes you get some beauty goals or some beauty saves out of it too. And I'm glad it's here, and I hope it doesn't go away. I don't want it in the playoffs, but I like it in the regular season.
I'm with you. I find it exciting. I think it's fun. It's always fun when you go to a game live and it goes to the shootout.
I've always wanted to see one live, and I've seen tons of overtime games. And I'm just praying that no one scores a goal, and 2 or 3 times it happens, they score with a minute left. I'm just like, oh no! So I have yet to see it live. I think it'd be so much fun to see.
Adam, what's your unpopular NHL or hockey opinion?
My unpopular opinion is. Well, I don't know. It's probably a popular opinion, but keeping fighting in the game, I think it deserves a place, because we're seeing this year that when refs put the whistles away, things start to get dirty, and a number of things start to happen that aren't so favorable to star players. So I think that's where fighting comes in, and that's where they start to police the game a bit.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I wonder if reffing just hasn't caught up. The game's changed so much, but has reffing really changed? And I don't know that it has, in certain ways for sure, but I wonder maybe if that's a little bit behind. Sanjay,
you remember the year after the lockout, that first lockout in 2005, and the year after that, it was just whistle after whistle after whistle. There's tons of power plays, and it just feels like they've eased off on that, and it's taken some time, and now players are starting to understand what they can get away with and not, and it's almost like they're playing the refs in a lot of ways.
It's a pendulum. It's going to swing back the other way again.
Yeah.
Sanjay, what's your unpopular opinion?
I have a couple. I don't know if this one's unpopular. If it's not, then I'll choose my second one. But my first one is Alexander Ovechkin's the greatest goal scorer in NHL history. Better than Gretzky.
I think that's a popular opinion.
That's popular?
Does anybody here disagree?
No. With the era that he's in, absolutely not.
I'll choose my second one then, and I think this one's unpopular, and it's that players in the past. A lot of times people say like, oh, they played in the past. If they played in today's NHL, they wouldn't do so good, and I think that's absolute crap. I think if you take a player from like the 70s or 80s and give them like a modern stick, a modern equipment, a modern diet, modern training, like a player like Gordie Howe, like he would absolutely run dominant in the NHL today. Like if you put Gordie Howe in his prime in the NHL, he put up 120, 140 points. Like
what about goalies,
I think older
though? Goalies is the big thing. Like, stand-up goaltending's gone, right? Patrick Waugh changed all that. Now it's the butterfly and its positioning, and the goalies aren't having to rely on their acrobatics and athleticism as much as they had to in the past. And
athleticism as they used to smoke.
But it was just flailing of limbs, right? Trying to stop pucks. Like it was Hasek all the time type thing. And nowadays
I would argue that like a lot of goalies that started in the 80s still had success in the 90s and early 2000s. Like you look at like a guy like Patrick Waugh started the butterfly, but other people like I'm just trying to think like a guy like Mike Vernon, Grant Fuhr, they had success in the 90s. They started in the 80s and they were much more the
early 90s was still kind of 80s. Like it wasn't until after that lockout in 94, 95, somewhere around there, that lockout, and then the trap game came in and everything, like the dead puck era started, right? And that's kind of because I think back in the early 90s, like there was still tons of goals scoring in that era, but continue.
I think like different when they do like the old timers games. It's not like every puck's getting shots going in on those old guys, right? Like they're still athletes.
Oh, of course.
And they had way smaller equipment, right? Like look at if they had today's modern equipment as goalies, like I think they'd be.
Look at Jaguar's like equipment, right? Like, and there's a guy who's like a while ago now, but man, that guy was wearing a spacesuit.
So Sanjay, are you thinking that if Gretzky played today, instead of getting 200 and some points this season, he would get like 300 some points in a season?
I wouldn't say 300, but I would say it would be like 200 or 180, 190. Like I have no doubt that I think if he played in today's NHL, like I always say like the Mario Lemieux example, the dude was retired for like 3 years, came back, not much training. He put up like in the height of the dead puck era, the dude put up like 70 points in 40 games. Like he almost averaged 2 points a game at like 35 after being retired for 3 years. So if he could do that, and Gretzky's similar skill set, if not better, you could argue. I have no reason why Gretzky couldn't average 2 points a game at least in today's NHL.
Interesting argument.
And it's easier to get shots away, right? Like you look at those 80s. Yeah, I mean the goalies weren't as good, but the hooking, the slashing, the grabbing, that's insane. That's like one play. Gretzky had to fight through all that. Mario had to fight through all that. Lindros, same thing. But in today's NHL, those are called, right? Like as much as we hate to see it as a fan, but you get the stick on the guys, you think, oh, that's such a stupid penalty, but they call it. And, I think players like that, I think they would dominate like today's NHL. I just do. I don't know. Maybe I'm just nostalgic, but I think they would dominate.
Who is one player that wasn't a star for your team that your fan base loves? So a player that wasn't like a number one, wasn't a top draft pick, wasn't an elite player by means, but your fan base loves. And because he's always prepared, Ryan, go ahead.
Oh, come on.
The Leaf fans always love the gritty players, the tough players, the grinders, the fighters. It's like a Ty Domi, a Darcy Tucker, those types of players. And I love them too. And I think that's why it's also taken this current fan base to really get behind this team, this current edition of the Leafs team, is because they're not like that at all. They're starting to get like that now this year, which is nice. But they just weren't gritty and tough and mean like a lot of the old Leafs teams were. And yeah, if you look at all the favorite players of all time, and I list Domi and Tucker because they weren't top stars, but like Clark and Gilmore and like those types of guys too were guys who get dirty in the corners and fight and scrap and claw for every inch of the ice that they could get. And those are the kind of players the Leaf fans love.
Go ahead, Adam. You had a lot of energy there for a second.
I did. And his name is George Laraque. He's definitely one of those fan favorites. He's even though he retired in Montreal, he's always an avid Oilers fan, an outspoken Oilers player from the past, and just bleeds orange. So that's my guy that was never like a number one that fans just love.
That's a great pick.
Yeah, he was a beauty. Even as a Flames fan, I always liked Larocque. Like, it always pissed me off though, because he was the heavyweight champion of the league.
Oh God.
And I hated that he was in Edmonton, right? Like, when you're having those Battle of Albertas and no one on your roster could touch him, it is kind of frustrating when you go into that.
I do remember the old Sportsnet commercial for Oilers, which was literally just him lifting weights. It was just him bench pressing weights. Oh. And it was like, wow. Go ahead, Sanjay. Who's your team's? Who's your guy?
I got a couple, but I'm gonna go more recent. Michael Furland. This is a guy that in the playoffs, that one series against Vancouver, he was a wrecking ball. Like, this kid hit everything. Like, Burrows hated him. Bieksa hated him. Remember, he called him Furkland in the media. Like, he was just in Vancouver's head the entire series. He got like 3 goals that playoff series, and then unfortunately injuries happen, and I think he only got 1 more playoff point the rest of his career. But that one playoff series, you still see like Furlan jerseys in the Saddle Dome because of that one series. It was amazing. So Michael Furlan.
I thought you would go with, who was the guy with the beard? Was that Reguer?
Oh, no, Commodore.
Commodore.
I didn't want to just keep going back to 04 because it's like the only thing we have. I wanted to feel like
I just remember that playoff run and all the fans be wearing like the beards in the stands. I thought it was great.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was
about that.
Yeah.
George Larocque's a great pick, but I'll go with a recent one here too, more recent one, and I'll go with Pat Maroon. Pat Maroon got top line minutes. He was a guy who essentially Anaheim kept half of his salary to get rid of him. And when he came in, the attitude just changed. Like, I remember specifically a game against the Ducks where they won and the Ducks were collecting game pucks, and he went in and grabbed the puck and took off the ice as a screw you. And him and Devin Setaguchi got into a fight at the end of the game because he wouldn't give him the puck. And it was just like a mentality of like, no, you're not going to do that with us here anymore. And I remember that shift being that change occurring from that. And I think people still want him back at this stage. It's probably not going to have the return it would, but you can tell like a lot of the fan base still loves him and appreciates it for it. So that's the one I'll pick.
Nice.
Yep. Well, that's about it for the episode of Delayed Offside. Like, click, subscribe. I think we started off a little rough off the tracks, but
I liked it. I liked just the beating to start.
We kind of got it together as it went. I was like, it's been 10 minutes. Like, we never even barely talked about the topic, but I was like, it just flowed well, so whatever. Yeah. But yeah, like, click, subscribe, check us out on Twitter, Facebook, anything else. Keep subscribing here. I think we're at like a fair bit of it now. So feel free to comment, ask questions on there. Guys, check it out sporadically and see if there's any questions and things like that. We'll address them on the pod. Much love with that. I'm Baron.
I'm Adam.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Sanjay.
This is Delayed Offside. Thank you guys again for listening.
Delayed Offside.